first, I'll start with saying thank you for being here. Always appreciate it. It's so weird the way things work. I was exactly thinking someone dropped off and I was stressing about it. And I was getting anxiety, which we're going to get into later. And I was getting such anxiety. I'm like, oh, I had someone in the mental health field that backed out last minute and I was so stressed about it. And then I went to that comedy show at the Da Vinci and I noticed you walking around. And I was kind of like, I bet you that woman has something prominent to do with this event. Because you kind of were walking around like you had something to do there. And then you went up and spoke that you're from Kelly Mental Health. And I went, bingo. When I get the opportunity, I'm going to ask her. And you were so open. So thank you for being here. That's awesome. So just to intro, this is Linda Kelly from Kelly Mental Health, the CEO and founder of Kelly Mental Health. She's got a master's in social work. She's a registered psychotherapist, certified clinical traumatologist. And yeah, so you deal with mental health. I love this topic because we were just talking about our background and work and absorbing things. And I've been in the child and youth work field. I don't know if you're familiar with child and youth workers.
I am, yeah.
You are, yeah. So I've been one for the last 9 years. So I haven't been in a counseling position, but I've worked in every field of mental health from custody to child welfare. I've been a children's service worker. I've been in residential mental health from DeLeco to Children's Aid. And I finally transitioned to the school system as student support because those other ones, I got to the breaking point. I hit burnout, to be dead honest. I remember one day it was just on shift where I dropped it all instantaneously. And I loved it. So you run Kelly Mental Health. And I want to start with plugging Kelly Mental Health and asking about what is it and what do you guys do?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, holy cow,
Yeah.
you've done
It's been
a lot.
A long journey.
Wow, your job's a lot harder than mine.
It's really tough. You were saying absorbing stories and it's mind-blowing. I don't think people know, and we'll get into those with people you've met along the way, but how in-depth some of these stories are and how traumatic they are and how resilient some kids are. Like when on my deepest, darkest days, I think of kids I've met and I've worked with and I went, wow, they got over, sexual abuse from the youngest age that they can remember, being assaulted by every family member to, working the streets for everything, drug addiction, and they're still going. And I've seen people turn their stories around. So I always look at those cases and say, if they can do it, who am I not? Who am I to complain, right? So...
Well, you're right. And there's people have certainly been through a lot. And one thing that's universal is everybody has pain.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. So what is Kelly Mental Health? Kelly Mental Health is a counseling clinic. It was me wanting to strike out on my own, wanting to build an amazing workplace for people. That was really primary for me. I wanted to build a team that had like-minded values, that we want to help people. We're in this for the right reasons. Thunder Bay needs a lot of help. And I was doing a lot of work up north. Fort Hope was one of the communities really close to my heart. By the time I stopped going up there, I felt like I probably knew every single person. And so when I started building Kelly Mental Health, it was about just trying to do the right thing. I see, a future of having created a center of excellence for the treatment of addictions and mental health. And the only way that we do that is by breaking that stigma finally, making it normal, making it completely understandable that people struggle. I mean, that pain is universal. Mm-hmm. And, what we try to do is to get people to get out of their own way. So you're never going to hear me on TV or on a podcast like spouting a bunch of scientific stuff because your average person is not going to pick up on that. They need to understand, how does this actually work and how does it affect me? And now what do I do about this? Mm-hmm. And that's what we specialize in, real people dealing with real problems.
I'm a martial artist by background, and we pride ourselves in being humble. And when you lose and you lose miserably, that's the best thing that can happen to you because it offers the most teaching lessons. And I was thinking about that, how we talked about earlier, removing the stigma. And there's such a stigma versus, having a really long-standing problem in your relationship, or having reoccurring panic attacks, or having frequent blackouts from drinking, or, all these things that people kind of sweep under the rug. And as long as they get back to work on Monday, they're back to it again. But why is that people see it so hard to say, hey, I can use some help? You know what I mean? Maybe maybe the mind isn't something that should be so stigmatized like that. I don't. What do you think gets in people's way from walking through that door or making the call? Because we'll make a call on our back hurts, we'll go to the chiropractor, right?
Yeah.
Instantaneously. We got a real bad stomach issue, we'll go to the doctor. But the mind is so. I think you made a real interesting distinction that I kind of hit home with me. There's a distinction between mental health and mental illness. And I
Yeah.
think when people walk through a counselor's door, they kind of stigmatize themselves like, oh geez, I got a mental illness here now. Or
Yeah.
what could you say to that?
That bugs me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was speaking with someone that runs a not-for-profit down in Dallas, and they're talking about coming up and having a conference. Anyway, she was talking about how we need to make mental illness understood better. And I said, whoa, wait. Because mental health and mental illness, they are two different things. Mental health is the realm. It is the part of your life that everybody has. And what we strive for is wellness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mental illness is when stuff's not going right in that field. So, not everybody struggles with mental illness as in like a diagnosable disorder,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the difference between being on the spectrum of, say, having ADHD, which I'm one, many of us creative types are.
Mm-hmm.
We're very much a squirrel, and we get distracted easily, but I'm still functional. I can still get up, get out of bed, I can get dressed, I can get to work. So therefore, it's not really diagnosable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Other points in my life, it has been. And same with depression. Everybody gets sad, everybody grieves, everybody goes through hard times where they need to take more time for themselves and have solitude. And that's okay. But it's when you're not functioning on a daily basis. You can't take care of yourself, take care of your home and your pets or your children or connect with your friends. That's when it's diagnosable.
Mm-hmm.
That is more of a mental illness.
Well, that's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, you labeled it as a spectrum, and I can so identify with what you're talking about. And I should have gave an intro here because we're going to cover everything under that spectrum, from anxiety, which we all suffer from. Trauma is a big one. We're going to talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, how your nutrition in your day affects you. But exactly what you just said there, that's something I always struggle with. Is like, I think I'm a high functioning person with a lot of anxiety, especially ADD too. Like, even when I'm talking to you, I have 15 things that are rolling up in my head that I want to pull down into this microphone, and it's tricky. But when does it? So I guess it can cross a line when you're no longer functional, where it becomes an illness, and then is that reversible? Because oftentimes, in the field that I work in addictions with the Sister Margaret Smith Center,
Mm-hmm.
and I work in the schools, where kids get labeled ADHD. The Sister Margaret Smith, they get, they have depression, they have anxiety disorders, there's a million disorders, I can name them all. But what are those? So are those reversible? Like, can those labels be taken off? Like, I find sometimes kids get stigmatized with those, and then they're on a medication, indefinitely, and it's something they kind of say, I have anxiety, I have a depressive disorder, and I'm dealing with it. But are they reversible to the point where if you're functioning, do you still have depression, or where's the distinction between that? I guess.
Absolutely, because people have episodes. We have depressive episodes that can pass with treatment or with the right steps that you take to get through them. I mean, this is not like diabetes where you've got it for life. And things like ADHD, it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I only mention that because for a lot of people, they get plugged with that,
Mm-hmm.
and then they've got it for life.
Mm-hmm.
And see, it's challenging because the world needs people like that. The world needs people that have 15 ideas in their head all at once, and they're constantly thinking and creating and doing. But the part that is challenging is when they become dysfunctional, when they have all these ideas, but so many ideas that they're overwhelmed by them and paralyzed by them, and then the anxiety takes over. Right? So that's when it becomes a problem. If you happen to have a label of some kind of a mental illness or disorder, borderline personality, that's a huge one. Bipolar disorder, that's a huge one. People believe that once you get it, you've got that label for life, and I am now just this person with bipolar disorder. Mm-hmm. And that really sucks, mm-hmm. right? Because we get people coming in our office all the time saying, well, yeah, I was diagnosed with this and this, so this is just what I struggle with. It's not cancer. It's how you feel and how you behave and the thoughts that you have. And I fully believe that you can get through these things. You need to understand what they are. You need to understand yourself. And learning how to create a better life for yourself. You know, it takes a long time for some people. And for others, especially with the right environment, with the right people around them, it doesn't take as much time.
Now, so I'm further trying to understand this. So, would it be kind of correlative to, like, say, somebody who says they identify as having alcoholism, but say they go 20 years without drinking? They might not identify with that every day, but it took them maybe 3 years of therapy and counseling to deal with those issues to get a baseline kind of stabilization to the point where they still have it, they still identify with it, but they maybe don't overtly identify with it. Is that kind of similar, or is it that different in a way?
I think it can be similar because for people that have longstanding depression, it's always there. It's in the background. It's like, I know you. I don't want to go back to you. With alcoholism, it's a challenging. I mean, addictions are challenging, right? They change the structure of your brain, right? So if you have addictions issues, you're always going to be susceptible to them, I think, just because of the way that they impact you.
Okay. Now, one that I want to delve into, because I'm going to try not to turn this into a personal counseling session for an hour, but anxiety.
Okay.
It's a huge one. And I think Erin May and I touched on that in the first episode, which I really enjoyed. Like, I'm just going to ask a flat question. Where do you think there's such an outstanding issue with anxiety with most common people these days?
Oh God, it's very complicated. And yes, I listened to the episode about the vagal breathing, and I have gone to Erin myself actually to take some classes and like some of her yoga classes where I'm in the class and my anxiety is so high, but at the end of it, I almost cry because my body has become so relaxed. I've been hanging on to so much tension and I didn't know it. Right. So I think there's just so many reasons, especially just it's the way our world works now. It's very complicated. Why is it that everybody seems to have crippling anxiety? Why is it in vogue to talk about that? Like that, it's funny even that we're all suffering. Well, I mean, I think we have this thing happening in our generation, especially where we start thinking about whether or not life is pointless. And I think that's because when you're a kid, you grow up thinking, okay, I'm going to be one of 5 things: policeman, lawyer, doctor, right? And what is it that anybody does these days? You can't even imagine what kind of job title you might have because it's so convoluted. I am a service technician, customer specialist support, right? What is it? It's not physical. It's not tangible a lot of times, what we do all day, what we do with our time. And you know, another thing is we've been so removed from the basics of doing what we need to survive. Nobody knows how to grow their own food anymore. Or I should say there's more and more people now with a lot of the local farms in Thunder Bay, and I love them. But we're so removed from our means of food production, which was the only thing that we needed to survive back in the day other than shelter, right? We're so removed from just the basics of being alive that we start to question it. And the things that we are stressed about these days are things that we can't run away from and we can't fight. You know, we think about anxiety with our fight and flight response. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And back in the day, or back in our, sort of evolutionary history, if we were walking in the woods and you see a predator, you hear something behind you, you fight, run, or freeze. And it was easy because then the danger is over. These days, you get an email, you get a ding from a text message, and your blood pressure shoots through the roof. You can't fight that. You can't hit it. You can't scream at it and run away. It stays. It's with you all the time. Social media stays with you all the time. And it's just, I think it's that so much of our stress these days it's intangible. It's always there. And a lot of us don't really know how to calm ourselves because we can't use the same things. We can't punch our boss in the face. We can't fight it the way that we used to be able to.
That's a very good point. I heard recently a quote, and it said, "Man's biggest fear, and not maybe people's biggest fear is public humiliation." One of them, and we're so in the public eye now. Like you go out anytime now, and there's phones on everywhere with Snapchat videotaping us. pictures are being taken. We're taking pictures of ourselves. It's in the public eye. So I wonder what that plays into the effect too. I think it's kind of back to what Aaron was talking about. We're in sympathetic mode all the time, and I liked what you touched on there, where it's in vogue almost now. Like people glorify their coffee content, like simple thing like that. Like, wow, I couldn't get through my day without 10 cups of coffee, and
Mm-hmm.
that to me speaks of like anxiety or tiredness or overwhelming life where you're not getting downtime, and why is more better. I
Yeah.
guess it's maybe a reflection on Western culture. I don't know, on productivity. Who knows? But
Productivity, definitely. Oh, that plays into it. Even when I was striking out on my own, you think about the kind of content that's out there for entrepreneurs. If you're not working, 90 hours a week, you're not going to survive. Or, 90% of businesses go belly up within 5 years, and you need to work hard. You need to be diversifying, and there's so much pressure. And I mean, sometimes I guess I think, wow, I wish life were a little bit more simple. That you don't need to put yourself up to that kind of I don't know, that kind of pressure all the time. It's terrible because you can't win. It's never enough.
mhm.
Earlier this year, I had a major crash and burn, and that was probably from I had 5, 6 clients every single day for a good 5 years. I was doing 2 to 3 jobs on my own, working weekends, working evenings, and raising my son. And
How old's your son, by the way? I heard you mention him.
he's 9.
Okay,
He's turning 10 soon,
nice.
and kind of doing that on my own. And I was just trying to stay afloat. And then when I finally had hired enough staff, and they were good, they were solid. Like, okay, you've got a caseload, you've got stuff to do, I've got projects. I ended up even giving away my own office so that I could set people up. And then I was completely useless. I watched so much Grey's Anatomy in a few months. It was actually pretty pathetic. But I crashed so hard that I really didn't get anything done for months. And I realized it was because I'd almost been saving up. Like I'd just been going on adrenaline, always feeling like crap, always tired. I drank so much coffee, like it was just unhealthy. And I love coffee, but because of all that, I haven't had a cup since May 24th.
Nice.
Yeah, I had to quit it. I'm a big fan of, N=1 experiments. And so that's when I got into controlling food to be able to deal with my energy to
What
try
was the
to.
experiment called again? Can you say that again?
Oh, N=1 is just
N=1.
my own thing,
Okay.
right? I'm not saying it applies to absolutely anybody
Yeah.
else, but that was a huge problem for me. My energy was horrible. At 9 o'clock, I would crash so hard. I was not functional at all. So yeah, that's when I started trying to take things into my own hands, trying to manage my diet, and I had to step back from the business for a while and just kind of let it be. So, talking about the kind of pressure that we put on ourselves, if I hadn't crashed, I would have kept going and just been constantly striving for, okay, what next? Okay, what next? How is that any way to live? Like, what quality of life can a person have when that's happening to them? It's never enough. What is your maximum? No one ever defines that. What is the most that you really want to give, or the most that you're willing to do, or what is the goal? And people are always kind of taught, I think, from an early age to shoot beyond the goal.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's from my personal experience. I'm a crazy overthinker. I'm gonna seek counseling services because I can't turn my brain off. It has 12 ideas at once or thoughts about what happened earlier or later in the day. But back to what you were saying, it's like I look at Instagram and you study people like Kevin Hart or the Smith or The Rock. Like I have them on there, and these people are glorified because they're like waking up at 4 a.m. and working till midnight at night, and working on 4 projects, and like they're looking happy and jacked and muscular and strong and healthy, and it's like this is the way to become successful. And for me, I hit the same point as you. I just crashed. I had a recent crash because it's just overwhelming, and I don't think it's just me. I think I see it in a lot of people, and especially, I don't know if it's just the field we're in, but I see it a lot with people crashes because they're just taking on way too much in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with those anxiety and in counseling people, how do you deal with that? What do you tell them? Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any coping skills? What do you tell someone who's just, I guess it's such a large gamut anxiety, so that's a pretty broad question, but what are some things to the struggling mind like myself that can never stop thinking that you would suggest? I know there's stuff I do partake in meditation and yoga and those things, but I don't know, they help, but want
Yeah.
full time. What do you suggest?
Yeah, how well do you do with that? If you're the person that has the, the manic brain,
Mhm.
meditation is really hard. I find meditation very challenging. I can do it if I'm in one of Aaron's classes.
Mhm.
That's about it. If someone sits me down and forces me to do it, oh, it's amazing. Can I sit in my room and do it alone? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
No, my brain feels like it needs to be doing something. Um, but there's a lot of tools that you can use for anxiety. And one of the things that we talk about sometimes is going from an external to an internal locus of control. Like we try to constantly control the things around us, keep, moving, keep, you're making dinner and you're buying stuff and you're trying to accomplish things. So it's all outside of yourself instead of paying attention to the chaos inside. So things like doing the deep breathing, that actually does help. Um, Things like having a routine that you don't have to think about, but that incorporates that, going for a walk every day, that exercise, that quiet time. And I would encourage as well, the quiet time is very important, especially for someone that has a brain that can't shut off. If you can go for a walk, I try to walk my dogs every day, and I used to listen to podcasts all the time. And then I noticed my anxiety level was creeping up. And I stopped listening to the podcast because it was this constant influx of information and I needed to stop it. And what do you know, that definitely had an impact. So stopping the constant influx of information, managing how much social media you're on or even how much internet you're on at all. Some of us can't escape it. It's very challenging.
I cut my data plan off just for that reason alone.
Wow.
I literally, and you know what though, in this day and age, you're never outside of Wi-Fi.
No,
You're
no,
not.
you're really
Like
not.
I literally, everywhere I go, I'm still in Wi-Fi. Like I have internet, but that is a good, even turning it off sometimes.
Turning it off. One of the things that's more tangible for people is there's a self-soothing kit you can create. So if you actually are developing a significant anxiety, just to the point that you're feeling so much discomfort that you can't focus, you can go and get your kit, which has things in it like tangible objects, like things that remind you of happy times. Like, for example, I have this little keychain. It's Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm not a fan, but it was a gift that was given to me by an old coworker's little boy, and he was congratulating me on starting my business. And not a fan of him, but I held on to this thing for years because I just thought this gives me a happy memory, a real something that's very personal, a happy memory. Some things that smell good, things that feel good in your hands. Even some people will keep a little book of quotes or something. So it's just a box. It's like your safety net. You can go to it and it soothes you.
Nice. Yeah, I have a diffuser and essential oils. I don't know what it is about them. The smell, I think they say smell is directly correlated to memories and that part of the brain, and I love it. I don't know, just the smells before bed. I put some on and it really takes my mind out of things.
There's a reason people spend so much time in the shampoo aisle. Honestly, just smelling all the soaps. And there's something really calming about it. So that's really cool. The other thing that we do is, so I am trained to provide EMDR therapy. So that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's aimed primarily at trauma treatment, but what it does is it uses bilateral stimulation. So we're talking left-right eye movement, or left-right taps on the knees, or we have buzzers that go in each hand. And what it does is it allows the brain to make connections between the emotional and the logical. So when you're traumatized by something, usually there's a split between emotional and logical. So you can't think logically about what happened to you because it's too emotional. It is too animal brain. So going through this, we pick this target, this very emotional, scary thing. For me, as silly as this sounds, my target that I did when I was in training was weddings, because weddings have always been mildly traumatizing for me with the stuff that would happen within my family, just the fights and the bitterness and the anger. It scared the heck out of me. So I choose this memory, and then we start doing this processing, and that one memory leads to another and another and another. And what happens is there's something that has happened in your life that is the fire, and you are now going into all the memories that the smoke has permeated. And it's such a cool thing. I love watching the processing, because you just don't know where you're going to end up. And suddenly, I'm having all these realizations. But within that, some people will become so overstimulated. The anxiety will take over. I've watched people double over and hold their stomach like they're bleeding out. I've watched people start shaking in their seats. I've watched people dissociate right in front of me where they weren't there anymore.
Wow.
And that is just your body screaming, don't let this happen to me again. So what we do is there's an exercise called calm place. And calm place is your place in your mind that's safe for you. So you would think about it like, imagine for you a place that is calm, comfortable, and warm and safe. Now, as you allow this thing to open up in your mind, imagine what you can see around you. Really think about it. Use the words of what you see around you. For me, I was on this beach. We had gone to Jamaica for a friend's wedding, and I remembered the colors. The colors of the sky was so blue. And now you think about, what can you feel under you? What are your hands touching? What are you sitting on? What are you walking on? What can you hear? What can you smell? And you make this moment become really real for you. And as you really allow the image to create itself, you try to press it into your memory and use a word so that you can cue it, so that you can remember it. And try to imagine how you feel within your body now. Now I'm in this moment, I'm on this beach in these colors, and I feel for once safe, like nobody needs me for just this moment. And that was so powerful for me. It has been so powerful for us to work with clients using these just sensory words, because you have the ability within your own body, within your own mind, to feel safe, to make that anxiety recede, just like the water moving away from the beach. You have it in you. There's just so much static in the way.
So that would be almost labeled the grounding technique then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So would you use the grounding technique in that safe place in dealing with trauma, like with
Yes.
processing it? You would, and you would kind of put them in that place in order to talk about it, kind of the effects of what happened, or how would you process that?
We use it like a toolkit. So as you're processing, sometimes things get a little bit too intense. And then the client would, have the ability to just, okay, put up a hand, tell me to stop, or give me some kind of an idea of when this is too much, you're at a 9 or a 10 out of 10, we got to stop. We don't want someone up and screaming, running out of the room.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go right into calm place. And then we continue with the stimulation, the left, right. But now we're talking to them about the calm place that was special for them.
So can I pause you for a second? So you're coupling this calm place in the mind with the stimulation, the left-right stimulation as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I heard it, they just started introducing this at the Sister Margaret Smith. There's a counselor trained in it, and they talked about the light that goes from left to right. Like your eyes follow the light as you talk about your traumatic experience.
That's right, yes. So the person that came up with EMDR initially, I think it was in the 70s, she noticed that as she was walking down a pathway, her eyes were moving left to right as she was looking at these trees on either side of the walkway. And she noticed that her mind was kind of flying from memory to memory to memory, but it wasn't staying in the memory long enough for her to become very upset about those memories. And at the end of the walk, she just realized, holy cow, like I feel so much more calm. I feel like I've processed it. It's like the faster you do this stimulation, left, right, it's kind of like the faster the train goes to get you to your destination. So it allows you to make those connections, to allow you to sort of explore it without having to drop anchor in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. That's really cool. Nucci and I talked about on one podcast they did with ketamine. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
They do the ketamine therapy to dissociate. But I don't have any knowledge of either of these that much, but I'd be interesting to see both the effects of, but it makes sense in both of them where you kind of have a safe place where you're not emotionally charged by these things that are happening as you talk about them. Because I've just been reintroduced to, I never thought I had trauma in me, and I did. I had some pretty traumatic experiences, and reliving them recently, they recently popped back up in my life. And the same thing what you said happened to me. I was fully incapacitated. I could not stop hyperventilating and crying, and I was, no matter what someone said to me, I couldn't calm down. It was frightful. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't been in that place. It reminded me almost of like a psychotic drug episode.
Wow.
It was pretty intense. So I could see how that would be helpful to someone. Um,
That's incredible.
so trauma, that's one in our field that is big. So what would you, does the trauma implant in you? Like, what is it that it sticks with people so ingrained that just the recollection of the memory can bring back this deep seated charge in people's body that's so intense and overwhelming?
I think it's when the trauma or the emotions haven't been dealt with. That's why it is so strong. It's like a wound that you have that's filled with dirt, and it's been allowed to heal with the dirt inside of it. And a lot of times we don't even know it's there because we are survivors, right? If you're a soldier on a battlefield and you've got traumatic things happening left, right, all over the place, you don't have time to stop and grieve. You move, you survive. And for many of us, that's what we've been doing all these years. Some people grow up with parents that hurt each other, and we grow up thinking it's normal. And then when we get into a life situation where that's not normal for us, we start to realize how traumatizing that was. Sometimes we don't know any better, and sometimes we're not able to process it because the situation or our life is not safe enough yet. That's why a lot of people will actually have these breakdowns when life seems to be like just nice, blasé, pretty peaceful. And it's like, wow, breakdown, why now?
Mm-hmm.
It's because your mind has decided, oh, you got time? All right, let's deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And for many of us, it's some traumas are almost like just learning for us. Like a child that burns their hand on the stove. Well, that's traumatizing, right? But if you have the supportive parent that then takes that child and teaches them, what's dangerous and what's not to fear the entire kitchen or not to ignore the stove for the rest of their lives, then they get over it, right? They deal with the emotions, they file away the new information, and they move on. For some of us, we have these traumas. A lot of it has related to abandonment in the research that I've done and a lot of what I've seen in my clients and even myself. When we have caregivers that are not able to be there for us, physically or even mentally, then we develop sometimes a distrust of the world. We are more on survival mode than others. So more likely to stuff away the bad stuff in order to keep surviving because we don't know what's coming next. I think we do that. We stuff it away to survive. So even just the fact that some people actually manage to get to that breakdown stage, I think that's amazing. That means that you have probably gotten to a place in your life where you have the capability of now healing this stuff and understanding the connections and finally putting it away.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like correlative to what I was talking about, like in martial arts, taking a humiliating loss, like a terrible defeat. It's like, well, that's now showing you everything that's going to unfurl from that lesson if you want to dig back into it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's neat. It's not neat, I would say, but it's interesting to see how kids adapt. Like I've worked with kids in treatment homes that, you flip over a whole deck of cards and you play the matching game, and they like are hyper vigilant. They'll beat you every time, like 40 to 12, because they're trained, I think, through what you're talking about, that fear of abandonment and that survival, that being hyper aware, that hyper acuteness to detail in certain situations. It's interesting to see how those things can manifest.
Yeah, well, for a child that's been abused physically, emotionally, verbally, they develop more in tuned senses, which the senses are really, they're associated with anxiety, right? Because if you are more hypervigilant, you're more likely to catch when a shift of weight in a caregiver or a tone is something that's going to be, here we go. Okay, we know where this is going now. We got to protect ourselves. They learn to sense these things. But the problem is that the human body is not built to be anxious 24/7. It's meant to be anxious in bursts to keep us alive. It's not meant to be this constant, never get rest kind of thing. This is like having your gas pedal all the way down all day long. You run out of gas. You are exhausted. And so many of these things that we deal with, like what we're talking about with the anxieties that we have, life challenges, they never stop. And so we're exhausted all the time. And then we laugh about it, because if we don't laugh about it, we'll get depressed. So, not to be cynical or not to be cynical or anything,
No,
but
it's I'm just identifying with a lot of what you say, and just there's no point to what I'm saying here right now, but I'm just sharing what's inside of me. Is just I've really started to take hold of it. How much, like, I walk in my social anxieties, or when I walk in a room, like, I scan it, I count the people, I look for exits, I go, is there threats here? Like, I fully survey a room every time I go into it. When I eat food, people have commented to me, like, I crowd my food, like, I hover over it. And these are all just things that have developed over time that just, like you say, they're wearing on me. They're wearing on my energy levels, and I don't even realize. They're almost like little soul suckers, or like little, like, leaks in a tire almost, that's affecting my overall performance. And I'm looking forward to, I'm really interested in finding, so I'm happy to have you here for our counseling services, because I think you guys offer a great resource. And trauma and anxiety, I think, are really prevalent in general right now. And I want to kind of correlate stuff to the city, because I really want that to be a focus of the podcast too. Like, what do you see that's going around with Thunder Bay lately? Because I guess the drug is a big one, and that's kind of what's going through my mind, because I think that's how I coped with a lot of my anxieties and trauma. When those feelings were and those thoughts, were too tiring and overwhelming, it was easier to escape in the highs, right? Those highs brought me back up. When you get drained from overthinking and being constantly on, then whether it's sedation or elevation, they give you what you not need, but they're necessary evil. I don't know how to frame them, but see that happening a lot in the city. What's your take on? Do you have any take on the city and what Thunder Bay's overall scope is looking like right now?
I think there's a lot of tension in this city. There's a lot of tension, and some of the issues are very challenging, because there's people on every which side, I want to say both sides, but every which side, that have opinions about how things should be, and those opinions clash. But ultimately, everybody agrees on one thing: they want it to be better. They just can't see eye to eye on it. And the thing about addiction, I mean, you said it yourself, this is a coping skill for some people. For some people, it's all they have. You take away that drug, and they're paralyzed without it. They can't even get up. They can't function. Some of the people that are on the streets here in Thunder Bay have seen or been subjected to more violence, more trauma than you and I will ever be able to read about in one lifetime. And so, I'm not saying that addiction is the answer. It's not. It's a Band-Aid. It's just a way to continue on, to get through. And it's scary, because, of course, like we said, addiction changes the structure of the brain to the point that if that was once the only thing that made you happy, now it's the only thing that can ever make you feel good, even for a temporary period of time. And as you fall into, the cycle of addiction, you lose more and more. You end up with financial problems, relationships problems, and then you want to use more because, well, why not? I've got nothing left. So it's difficult in the city too, because you've got people that will sort of spout off to me in frustration. Well, I mean, I've heard people say, everybody that has an addiction should just die. I've heard people say that with the utmost conviction. I've also heard, the stories of people that do have addiction, and people that are in that, and they just don't care. They just, well, screw everybody, I am going to take what I want because you have no respect for me. You don't give a crap about me. So, I mean, how do people ever see eye to eye, or try to find peace in that? It's frustrating. There's the legacy of the Indian residential school system. I've heard people say, well, okay, that happened this many years ago and they got to get over it and that kind of stuff. Well, okay, if you've ever done a trauma history on your own family, you might understand that the reason that your grandfather used to beat his wife was because he had PTSD from the war, and so she was cold to her children, and her children reacted by doing that. It is generation upon generation, and we have to understand it. We have to stop creating more stigma around addiction, around the person that has an addiction, because it could be anybody. It could be you, it could be me. It takes a big trauma or a series of traumas, a lack of coping skills, a lack of support, And even things like physical health issues. Doesn't take much, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest problem, and maybe the reason that our politicians can never really agree on anything, is because it's not a simple issue. It's a very complex issue. And I just, it's really hard to speak about it because I wish I had more of a solution. I wish I could be one of those people that says, here's the solution, now let's do this and let's resolve this issue, but it's deep-seated.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people they got to need the help, they got to want the help. But if you're a person that has grown up with all of that stuff, you're not going to trust anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you're certainly not going to trust the people that say, well, you're worthless because you have an addiction. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I find a thing I've noticed about it, and I'm guilty of doing. I'll give a little example about this, and it's going to go into a bunch of overarching topics, but we forget the human face in it. We forget the humanity in it. Like, say, for example, this is off the addiction subject, but say the travel ban to the United States, right? Muslims and certain countries weren't allowed to travel to the United States. First I heard that and said, okay, great. They're defending their country, they're doing what they need to do. It doesn't sound too bad. They're not letting people in. But then I heard a story of people from Iran who are living here, nicest people in the world, and they can't get the opportunity to go to States, and there was something they need to go do there, and they're not allowed in the country. And I went, wow, that's like real faces to a real problem. Or I heard about, you hear about people getting deported back to Mexico, and you say, well, they entered there illegally, That's kind of, they asked for the bed they laid, and you hear a lot of the dichotomy of views. Some people are, which I'm going to get into, that there's such a dichotomy now, and I think it's intentful and purposeful. But until I heard a story of a family member whose friends were being possibly deported, and they had kids, and their family's being torn apart, then you hear a little bit more of the human face. And I think that's what needs to come back to it a little bit more, is the humanity. I think we've been so polarized, and I don't know where this polarization's come from. You even see it in our elections that recently happened. There's such a left and a right now. You see it on Facebook. There's the left and the right. You see it in United States in the presidency. You see it in the point of view in Thunder Bay. You're either a social justice warrior or you're a hardcore right conservative. Where that's what I've seen. Anyways.
No, it's so rude.
it's just so oppositional. And there's like this funny meme about, like, I just saw it on Facebook where it's like right-wing conservatives are like, oh, I wish everyone would just quit getting upset about everything, and then they have all the things that they're upset about, whether it's transgenderism or this and that. But I wonder too, this is just a random out there thought, what do you think the change in the I'm just going to say it, I think the change in the family dynamics over the last 20 years has played a big part of it, and the social structure. Like, if you think of Thunder Bay in the 70s, right, it was a very nuclear family unit. Things weren't great, and they weren't the best. I'm not saying they were better that way, but they were kind of routined. People had stable jobs, you lived in a core family. The family's kind of split apart now. There's a lot of individuality. People are kind of off all on their own now. I find a lot more, there's single mothers trying to raise 2 or 3 boys and a girl, and they're trying to do it on their own, and that's a crazy hard feat. Most cases I've seen in social welfare, it's the mom. By themselves with kids, right? And there's such a lack of this. Community starts with the family, in my opinion. And I don't know. It's just an overarching thought that I'm thinking about. It's a little bit all over the place, but right. I just think we've been intentionally divided almost. I don't know why. I don't know. I just think it's reflective of society in a way.
Well, I get what you're saying about just the lack of community, the greater sense of isolation. When I was raising my son, and when he was an infant, I've never felt more isolated in my life. I was the only person in my friend group who had a child. Things weren't good between me and his father, and so I felt like I was doing it on my own at the time. And I just thought, well, 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, the family would have been all here. I mean, we all would have been doing this together. It wouldn't have been just all heaped on one person here. And it was challenging. And I think what you're saying too, it's not necessarily that like split families are better or worse.
Yeah,
sometimes they're definitely better, but that we have less of a roadmap for this. So something personal about me is that, so my son is 9, and his father and I split up when he was barely 2. And after we split up, his father and ended up developing late onset gender dysphoria.
Okay.
So his father is now has transitioned.
Okay.
And is a woman. And so imagine trying to find a roadmap for that.
That's what it kind of alluding to. Neither is good or bad. I'm not placing any judgment on it. It's just so, like what you said with social media, like everything is so specific. It's even hard to identify things these days.
It is. It's like all of this new information, and it's so wonderful that people are now feeling more and more comfortable to just be themselves, to be who they are. For my ex to be able to come out and be who she is, that's wonderful. For people to divorce because it's ultimately better for them, that's wonderful. But it's like, well, our parents didn't do that. We don't know how to do it. That wasn't modeled to us. So now we're figuring it out on our own. And that's scary. That's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be a big challenge.
Yeah, society, I think, is definitely, because I think you've probably seen from your practice, environment plays a key factor in what shapes people. And the environment now is kind of, the cards are stacked against a little bit. And I'm not trying to sound pessimistic. It's just, there's so much. You know what? Being optimistic too, there's just as many tools and supports now than ever, I would think, and as many roadmaps to health and prosperity. So
right, but as a millennial, you're also exposed to the constant struggle of, okay, we're never really technically going to be able to buy a house. We're always going to be in debt. If we want to live even a fraction of the way our parents live, we have to be incredibly in debt. Oh yeah, and the earth is dying. Right. So, I mean, how do you?
And we're inundated with that on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. How do you get good with that? How do you function and worry about, getting your kid to a birthday party on time and that kind of thing when you get a report? Oh, look at that! Another ice cap melted. And oh, look at despite all of these efforts in cleaning up with the, remember trash bag challenge or trash tag, people were cleaning up all this trash, and then you go, oh, well, they're just essentially putting it elsewhere, right? The companies that produce the trash are not doing anything about it. So then it's these, I think, also play into why these mental health issues and this anxiety and this depression develops, because we feel everything is so big. How powerful are we truly? Can we even have any control over ourselves?
Well, I loved your statement, and I would love to almost shift it back to that. Is like your philosophy, your mission is to empower people to become the best versions of themselves, and I love that, because that's what gives me my passion in life. I live by that motto almost. That's one of my favorite things to do. If I can see somebody grow an inch, and I've been helping them do that, I get no. Other than the pride of seeing them happy, that's all I need from that. What got you into this field for doing that? What sparked that passion? What sparked your interest to want to counsel people and help?
I think because I kind of always did it. I was that person that I liked talking to people. My mom is a big talker, so it was always just conversations constantly, and did the same with my friends. What's going on? Okay, tell me about it. And so I tended to want to give more advice. And just, I enjoyed learning about why people do what they do, what makes them tick, even just understanding relationships, the way that people have these dynamics with each other. And sometimes we'll have people come in for relationship counseling, which we do a lot of, and they'll be, they'll learn all these skills like, okay, we're going to validate each other, and we're going to be open and communicate. And then as soon as they get home, it's just like head to head. No, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's funny because that's a dynamic. It's kind of like we become a cog and they're a cog, and we just can't help it. We just keep going together the same way. We keep trying to do the same thing without being able to change that dynamic. So I find that really fascinating, and just how we can learn more about ourselves, our core beliefs, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is pretty much the gold standard for psychotherapy. That's what we always start with. And what that looks at is how your thoughts, so what are you thinking that's influencing now how you're behaving, and then where are your core beliefs in this? If you walk into a room and you're immediately looking for danger, well, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, am I going to get embarrassed here? Am I going to get rejected here? Well, why are you thinking that? And then how is that making you feel? Well, it's probably making you feel pretty squirrely, right? And then you're acting closed off, and people are looking at you funny because you're acting weird, but your thoughts are telling you, no, they just don't like me. So that's a core belief. Why do you have that core belief that people don't like you? Where's the value in that? If you can figure out what the value is in that, you're halfway to being able to solve it. Because for me, the value in walking into a room and think that no one's going to like me is that I don't have to try. So then I don't have to take that risk. That's the value. I'm keeping myself safe, even though I'm making myself suffer.
Social anxiety is a huge one for me. I don't know. I would love to. That'll be for another day. Get a one-on-one therapy session for that, because I don't know what it is. There must be a million beliefs, because in a room with more than 50 people, my brain is going on overdrive. Oh, yeah. And I try, and I'm a social. I grew up in a family of 8, so I think I became a functional extrovert when I'm naturally an introvert. I think that's part of play to it, but. Yeah, it's just overdrive. I would love to know what thoughts are creating those value statements, which are creating those actions, which create your reality, right? If you're feeling closed off and you're presenting something, then naturally the world's going to react to you in that way.
Exactly. And then the more anxious you get, the less logical you become, right? There is a change in the brain when we enter that sort of fight and flight. And I like to talk about it in terms of a scale. So from 1 to 10, 10 is full on panic attack, you're running, you're screaming. And 1 is perfectly calm. So from anywhere from 1 all the way up to maybe 7, you still have that ability to sort of pair logic with it. You can walk into that room and you see these people and they look up, and you might have that impulse like, they're going to reject me. But you could also say to yourself, it's okay, they're probably just looking at what I'm wearing. Or maybe they're nervous too. But once you get to 8, 9, 10, your brain closes off logic, and it does it for a reason. It doesn't want you, when you are in a survival situation, to go, maybe I should check out what that noise was. It wants you to run, right? So it shuts it down. So if you're walking around in an anxious state most of the time, you're not going to be thinking wisely. You are going to be all emotion. You're going to be all automatic thoughts. And usually those thoughts are somewhat negative, but they are meant to keep you alive.
I wonder if that's correlated to people drinking to blackout, because there's a lot of that in the city. I'm guilty of it many times over.
That's like a Thunder Bay pastime.
It is. It's pretty normalized here, and I wonder if that's just that progression, like you're talking about, to the point where people need to go, this is too much for me. You know what I mean? I need to take the alcohol into a state where I'm dissociated from the whole thing in general. You touched on couples counseling is a big thing.
Oh yeah.
And do you have any advice for the couples out there? What do you see come up? Validation. I heard you say that word. And
validation.
That's just, I've been trying that recently with my partner, or she's been trying it with me, and it makes all the difference in the world when someone says, hey, I'm actually listening to you, not sitting there waiting till you shut your mouth and they're going to tell you what you did wrong and the way they think and feel, but to say, I hear you're upset. So anyone up there, the couple in a relationship, validation works wonders, but you're the person with the knowledge in this. What would you say to couples just in general, an overview of what makes a healthy relationship?
Well, okay, so they say the 4 signs of a relationship that's about to fail are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So being critical of each other, showing contempt, being just like you have no respect. Stonewalling, so when a partner tries to get your attention or tries to say an idea around you and you just nothing at all. And then defensiveness is the complete lack of willingness to hear the other person's side. So in couples counseling, and even, really in any relationship, friendships, we can't be defensive, because then we just turn away from each other, right? We need to turn towards each other in order to establish that communication. So validation goes a long way. It literally, you can watch a person deflate in a good way when you validate them. My husband was in a mood. He said he wasn't in a mood, but he phoned me and he was just so angry because apparently no barbers in this city are open past 4 o'clock. Blah, 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 blah.
Barbershop in West Frederica. Go to the barbershop.
No, he loves them, but they're always so busy.
No, they're not anymore. They have 4 barbers in the chair. If he wants a beer to de-stress while he can, $30. I had to do it. I had to do it. Brian's the best.
Yeah.
Go to barbershop. Anyways,
Yes,
keep going.
he
Sorry.
is. So he's so mad about this. And I said, well, you knew this. This is like the fourth time that this has happened in the past 2 years. You phoned me, you're all freaking out because, and I said, well, why did you lay on the couch so long? You should have gotten up and you had the day off. And he's like, well, I had to take time and I was tired. And then I thought, oh, I just want to give it to him. I just want to say like, I told you so. But what I'm doing in that moment is I'm saying, I'm right, you're wrong, you should feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to resolve the situation?
That's
and,
me, to a T.
much less he was driving, and he hates driving in Thunder Bay.
Why?
Because it's Thunder Bay.
I don't mind it. Well, you got the Thunder Bay trap. People don't. Yeah, I don't mind Thunder. Well, that's that's a whole podcast in itself.
We're gonna talk about Thunder Bay driving next podcast. Yeah.
Okay, so what?
So what I did instead was I realized that in that moment I'm like, no, I can't do that. Because what's gonna happen is it's gonna escalate, right? It's gonna escalate, and then he's gonna be mad. I'm gonna be mad. So I just said, hey, I hear you. I know it's frustrating. Why don't you come home for now and we'll figure it out? Maybe we can go another day. And he just deflated. He's like, yeah, you're right. Okay. But we could have carried on. We could have been fighting for a while just because it was frustrating. And it was frustrating for me to hear him, getting all pissed over something that I thought was a non-issue. Mm-hmm. But that happens every single day with couples, with families, with parents and kids. If you can open yourself up just to, even if you don't actually truly empathize, even if you don't want to feel what they're feeling, say the word, say that you do. Mm-hmm. And they will all automatically just feel like you're not an enemy, mm-hmm. right? If you can hear what does it truly cost you to acknowledge that they must be feeling pain?
I hear you're struggling.
Yeah.
Something simple as that.
I'm
so guilty of everything you just described. Like I'm 1,000% guilty of. Like I just had that argument. I just got a dog and the dog needs to be walked. It's a puppy and I'm working 2 jobs and I'm walking in the morning at 7. Yeah. So same thing, why are you laying on the couch on your day off? Why hasn't the dog been walked? But that person needs to relax. They had a stressful week, there's always way more things that come into play. So mm-hmm. Validation's one. Anything else? Cause I'm eating these up. I need some more. I need some more tips. Relationships are tough.
Relationships are really tough. They are. But one of the things that I've done in couples counseling is it's just attunement. And so one exercise that you can do is every day when you get home, you hug, but you hold each other, right? You hug for as long as it takes to relieve some of the pressure, right? So the person that gets home first, they can't be busy and distracted when the next person comes home. They need to at least devote a little bit of thought to, okay, he's coming home, I'm going to be ready. And when he's coming home, I'm going to be ready to see her or him or vice versa, whatever.
Name your gender pronoun.
Thank you. So what they do is then they come together and they put their arms around each other and then they wait until their bodies begin to relax. And you can usually feel it, the shoulders first. The shoulders start to relax. And then after a minute or so, if a minute is painful for you, you got 1,000 things to do, maybe keep it to 30 seconds. Each partner needs to tell the other partner where they are tense in their body. Oh, my right shoulder kind of hurts. So then the other partner will put their hand on the right shoulder. And they'll just keep it there until it starts to relax. Because what that's doing is it's like a physical example of validation is that I hear you, I'm helping you with this. And once the bodies are relaxed, your mind is relaxed and you are not defensive, you are open and you trust. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a neat exercise.
No, I like that. Like I said, I meditate I would say frequently, not as much as I like to, but it takes about a good 15 minutes sometimes till I'm like, holy moly, my shoulders are, I got to drop them down.
Yeah. Have you ever watched those ASMR videos?
No, what's that?
YouTube?
Explain that to me.
I can't quite remember what the acronym is, but it's like gentle talking. So there's a girl called, her username is Gentle Whispering, and it's actually used quite extensively for insomnia. And the reason I think that it works is, so she has really good microphone systems, and she'll do things like tapping her nails on mirrors, and and touching a brush, like how you put your thumb across a brush and it makes that really distinct noise, or touching papers. And something about the sounds, I'm not sure if it's the familiarity or just the fact that you've really got to listen to really feel the full effect of them, it makes your body relax. And so sometimes when I can't sleep, which actually is more rare nowadays, I would watch those videos, and I would notice within about 10 minutes, oh my God, I didn't realize how tense I was, that my shoulders weren't relaxed, and I just sank right into the bed. And it's wild. And some people think that it's hokey, but I don't care. If it works, it works.
An example that I've heard of that too, and it's really surprising. I watch this YouTube like crazy, mental health stuff, and I work with teenagers, so I'm always trying to find tricks. And even I have to re-listen to this because you labeled a lot that I want to look into further. But the eyes, when we go to sleep, we don't realize when we're thinking, like we squint them, we pinch the forehead, because your mind is like in that concentration mode still, where we're like tense in the face. And that's what the video said, like one of the keys to falling asleep is like letting your eyes just like fall into their sockets. And I just taking note of that, I realized how tense I was when I sleep. Because I don't have a problem. You mentioned sleep difficulties. I don't have a problem falling asleep, but staying asleep for me is a real tough one. I think it's part of that anxiety, part of that overwhelming. I'll wake up at 2 and be like, boom, I'm awake and wide awake, and my mind just, okay, you got a little bit of sleep in you there. Now back to thinking again.
Yeah.
So through your struggles with sleep, did you find any causative effects to that? Any help, like anything you did to help with your sleep?
It was 100% stress, because it happens when I'm traveling. If I'm out of town for a while, or it'll just happen from time to time. And I think that it's not always problematic. They used to say that, you ever hear the story about Leonardo da Vinci always slept in short bursts, or would always be up in the middle of the night, and that's when he would get his greatest ideas. And so sometimes when I can't sleep, I might get up, but then I might go do something that is really meaningful for me, writing something. There's something very powerful about just the dead of night. Nobody needs you for anything, and you can just be you. So if you can look at it that way, it's not a real problem. But if it's to the point that you're sleeping all night, but you're not waking up well rested, that's an anxiety problem. That's your body is still tense. You have too much adrenaline going on. Your muscles haven't loosened up throughout the day. And so that's not good, right? Because then you're going to wake up, and that anxiety scale is already going to start off at a 5. It's going to take a lot less to spike you up to a 10. So just being aware of that, and going through those motions, like the progressive muscle relaxation, to be able to relax each body part. And there's plenty of things on YouTube. There's lots of recordings that you can download. We even have one podcast that we put on our website, just walking you through relaxation. So
what's that website? So people
just on kellymentalhealth.com.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have lots of articles that are written by our therapists and myself on all the different mental health issues that we talk about on a regular basis, how it applies to real life, and even what it's like to be a therapist. One of our therapists, Kelly Graham, she wrote a really gripping article about burnout. It's called "This is Burnout," and it's actually going to be in our next magazine. Kelly magazine is coming out with our 4th edition very soon, and it's just very powerful. She says, I've run out of fucks to give. And just that constant chronic feeling of tiredness, and everything gives me anxiety rather than a burst of energy. It's everything feels like an assault. And so she just describes it really, really deeply, because she was going through it. And it really resonated.
When's that coming out again? Because I want to look at that. I want to watch it.
Our 4th
that's going to be in the magazine.
The magazine, yeah. So that edition, we're just waiting for printing. So it should be within the next couple of weeks.
Where would people pick up your magazine if they ever want to find it?
Well, through our foundation, we have Kelly Mental Health.
Got a lot going on.
Yeah.
No wonder you're tired.
I told you sometimes when I can't sleep.
Start a foundation.
I did. I started a nonprofit. And the reason that I started a nonprofit was because I ran Kelly Mental Health like a nonprofit anyway. And so the problem is that when you have essentially a solely owned corporation, a for-profit corporation, then it doesn't it's not helpful if you want to try to get government grants to be able to provide counseling for people who can't afford it. You can't get that. So I created the nonprofit to be able to do more of our educational stuff, to distribute this magazine that our therapists contribute to. And we are actually very, very lucky to be in receipt of a donation that's coming actually next week from the Andrew Miedema Foundation. And that is going to be earmarked to help primarily males, adult males that are dealing with anxiety and suicidal risk, to get counseling for free.
Wow.
Yeah, so really, really excited about that. And that's why we needed the nonprofit. We needed something to be able to go after that stuff, to provide this for people. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I get super distracted.
No,
but
I love it. You go off to wherever and keep going with that. I don't even know what
Yeah.
stemmed that off.
Yeah, the magazine. So
Magazine,
yeah,
yeah.
the magazine is distributed. I usually drive it around town. I drop it off at Calico and Bay Village Coffee, and I drop it off at the complex. I left a whole bunch. Wherever I go, like to a business, and I see, hey, you have a waiting area? Do you want some magazines? I will bring them, and sometimes businesses will ask us for a few. And we also have a subscription option for people that want individual copies. And I believe right now it's like $12 for the year, and there's 4 magazines, and all that does essentially is pay for the shipping, like just for us to be able to put it in the mailbox.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Otherwise,
do you go to mental health agencies and drop it off, like CCTV, St. Joe's, any Children's Aid, any places like that?
We haven't yet, and the only reason for that is just because and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but sometimes when it's a government-regulated agency, they're very concerned about who's producing the stuff that's on their shelves.
Makes sense.
So for right now, we were doing sort of our own organic outreach.
Gotcha.
We actually had a situation at LU where with our first magazine, one of the main articles that was listed on the cover was what to do if your partner's ex is a psycho. So that was actually written for someone that worked for us, and she was going through this issue herself. And so it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, because the very first line of this article is, okay, not actually a psycho, but someone that's very emotional, very difficult to deal with. Well, so we go to distribute at LU, and we got a call from one of the higher ups that said, we absolutely will not distribute this because this is not inclusive language, and it's very, could be very harsh for some. And we're like, hang on a sec, did you read the article? Mm-hmm. Like the reason that this was on the cover page was to get people's attention, because people like you and I might use the word psycho tongue in cheek, right? We're not actually saying, someone that has severe mental health issues. It's not about that. Mm-hmm. And then we got calls from 3 other departments at LU's asking us to do workplace presentations. So it was like, on one hand, no, this is not okay. And then on the other hand, wow, we love what you're offering. So
interesting.
Yeah, we sometimes have some troubles with that.
It's very interesting. There's so much in there that I want to touch on. That was super cool. So say someone for like myself, I work and have benefits. I have an EAP program. Would I get counseling services provided through my EAP program? So
EAP programs are usually contracted to, in Thunder Bay, they tend to go with these national companies like Chappelle, Arette, Meridian. I think that's another one. So they're national companies that then go to individual practitioners in Thunder Bay and contract them and say, if we have a referral, can we put them through to you? And there's no guarantee of referrals. So the EAP providers, 9 times out of 10, are individuals that have home offices or maybe a private office, and they take the odd client.
Okay, so it's not like where I go for chiropractor or massage, where it's like there's everyone who's registered I can go to, I can pick and choose. It's kind of like they do the picking for you.
That's right. With EAP, they do. And we've been approached before to be contracted for EAP. So we're just kind of trying to work that out about how it does work, because the company then pays our company to basically be waiting in the wings for when their people need it. So it's interesting. It's an interesting setup. We'd love to be able to venture into that territory. But at the same time, most of the time, if you've got workplace benefits, you have some kind of coverage for either a registered social worker or psychotherapist. And that's what we are. So because I own the company and I supervise everyone that's on all of our employees, the 8 other therapists there, everything goes under the roster of registered social worker. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So are you actually in the counseling seat still, or has your new role been partaking in running the company, the foundation, and the magazine?
Well, I'm still in the counselor's seat,
Okay.
somewhat. I have definitely reduced my caseload, and it's actually kind of heartbreaking. That was a hard time to try to figure out what this new role is, but at the same time, I've got a staff of 12. I have a lot going on between this and the foundation and the magazine, and we're actually hosting a show on Shaw Cable
Very
now.
cool.
It's called Let's Grow, and it's all stuff like this, conversations about mental health. So that's on YouTube as well. And there's just too bloody much to do. Like, I don't want to not do counseling anymore, because I need to still be a part of that world and still continue to learn and continue to train and to work with our clinical staff. But I can't at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've kind of grown outside yourself a little bit, almost, and in a good
Yeah,
way. I'm not
yeah.
saying it's developing into something more.
That was part of the role change and a little bit of the burnout earlier this year too, right?
Yeah.
Because it was, okay, you guys are good, we're set up, I have these transfers out. Now who am I? Oh my God, what do I
Yes.
do with this? I don't know what to do with my time.
Uh-huh.
So it's been a really, really interesting year.
Yeah. Well, I even heard you talking about, getting into making media content, and
Yeah.
that's cool that you're exploring that you're looking into other avenues yourself and exploring, because that's what life's all about, right? Is continually growing and developing. And I
Yeah.
like that you're doing that. Speaking of growing and developing, I hope you don't mind. I found it remarkable going through your Instagram feed of just the transformation you made on yourself. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you're interested in talking about that or not, but I found it pretty compelling. You completely transformed yourself. And what sparked that, and what was that about, if you don't mind me asking, if you want to go into detail?
Is that more about my health journey?
Yes.
Okay. My
Yeah.
health journey has been, unfortunately, one of the defining issues of my life.
Okay. How so?
Because, okay, I used to have one of these old camcorders, these 8mm camcorders. That was my only entry into like media, which is really sad. I know. I have two of them. So I was watching one a couple of months ago, and I had taken some footage from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else had the camera. They were watching me, and I just felt so sad for myself.
Your self-image, almost?
In high school, I was well over 200 pounds.
Okay.
And I was that from an early age. I think it was, we moved when I was in grade 4, and then, just the food quality that was being brought into the house got worse, and we didn't learn really what healthy eating was. And so I was always big, but in high school I got really big. I mean, I lost out on a lot of opportunities because of the way I felt about myself. In university, I topped out at 275 pounds. And it was just, I felt like crap all the time. And even so, when I started to get healthy, I was exercising. I was doing step classes at the complex every day, and I lost about 90 pounds. But then I had my son, and that didn't stick, and life kind of went back to how it was. I didn't go as high as I was, but this latest time, when I get interested in stuff, I'm utterly obsessed. So I got into keto, and that was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
On keto, I lost 70 pounds, and for the first time in my life, I actually was a healthy weight. And I found it just really life-changing, because I had to get into the science of it all, and I started to learn so much about nutrition and the role it plays and the way that it affects our mental health. Because not only was I losing weight, I was feeling healthier, my energy was better, my head was clear. I went off ADHD medication. I didn't need it anymore. It was incredible. And then earlier this year as well, I went through another change, which is kind of like keto extreme, and I went carnivore.
Yes, which is so cool. And I think I mentioned to you, because I'm a big podcast advocate, especially Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And Jordan Peterson and his daughter both subscribed to the carnivore diet. And he talked just about the massive benefits that it helped with his mental health, with his daughter's autoimmune disorder that she had. She had a crippling one. I don't know if you're aware.
Did, yes, absolutely.
So you know about that. So what sparked you to go from keto to carnivore?
Well, it was because I started to gain some weight back.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was part of it because, keto, first of all, I'm not a tracker. I think I was able to track calories and macros for about 6 months, and I did well, but I I'm not a tracker.
What does the term macros mean? I keep hearing people say that.
Macros are your major nutrients, so carbohydrates, fats, and proteins.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are macros. And with keto, you're looking at 70% fat, 30% protein, and the rest
Sugar or
carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So I would keep my sugar to 10 grams or less a day.
Wow, that's nothing.
No, it's nothing. It's like my kid.
That's like the sugar in your coffee, pretty much. Or if you do that.
If that, yeah. No, my kid picks up an iced tea. I'm like, yeah, you can have one sip of that. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the thing is, it's very easily accomplished when you're eating whole foods, right? You're eating meats, you're eating vegetables, you have some cheese. Don't overdo the cheese, especially not the cream cheese. My God, cream cheese is so good. Anyway, I love food.
I do too.
But the reason that I switched over to carnivore was, yes, I started to have some weight gain, but I also started to feel kind of crappy. And I had these journals going back to April or that kind of area, and I was writing, I feel like I'm dead. I feel unmotivated. I feel lost. And this was also in the midst of some burnout. So I started reading about Dr. Paul Saladino and Sean Baker and Frank Tufano and these major carnivore advocates. And the science made so much sense to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a good shot. May 24th, I was sick for the weekend. This is the reason why I didn't have any coffee. Quit coffee. Took me 5 days of withdrawals. My body was aching. My shins were aching, the weirdest parts. And it took 5 solid days for the aches to go away. And then I went carnivore. And within 2 days, despite being completely sedentary, I was out jogging every morning. I started doing 6 kilometers a morning with my dogs. And I hate walking my dogs and running them because they're terrible. But my energy went bam through the roof. And what was I doing? I was eating a pound of local farm ground beef at lunch. And
Sorry, interrupt 1 second. Do you mind killing the furnace for me, Jared?
I don't know where the controls are.
Just go around there. It's okay. This is all part of the podcast. You go in there. There's a little switch on there. You look in the bottom. It'll say heat. There's a switch heat, cool, and off. Just turn it to off. I thought it was off this whole time because it was getting a little chilly. Did you find it was a little chilly?
A little, yeah.
It's getting a little, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I thought because we usually got to turn the heat off because this will pick up on the mic like so loud. It's interesting when I first bought these. It was kind of like spy gear. I had it in my basement practicing podcasting, and I played music too, so I was playing into it. And you can hear like conversations on another floor, like on the other end of the house, like crystal clear.
Neat.
It's kind of neat and weird at the same time. But did you find it, Jeremy?
No.
Okay, I'll be back in 2 seconds, guys. Give me a second. Right here.
So he's going to get me to plug carnivore. And it's a little bit, what's the word? What's the word when people really agree or really don't agree with it?
With the carnivore diet?
Yeah.
I don't know. Oppose or for? I don't know. So.
Oh, yeah.
So your point of view has been people have been kind of opposed to it or for it?
Well, I mean, most of the people I know just think it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, who knows that I've been doing nutrition research for more than 10 years, takes it like gospel because she knows that I've never been motivated to actually do something because of my weight. Mm-hmm. I've only ever been truly motivated and actually made changes because of my health. Mm-hmm. And so it made sense because it was all of the nutrition that you're getting. Cows are able to turn grass into nutrients that we need that are most bioavailable for us. At the same time, there's different things for different people. Mm-hmm. So I have a friend that is more like vegan, right? And so she has a very particular point of view about animal welfare. And so that's more, I think it's ethics for her, but she's also a person that's never really eaten meat. So for me, even in high school, when I was not feeling well, I always needed a lot of meat. Otherwise, I'd always feel off. Mm-hmm. Like I just wouldn't feel like myself. And then having eliminated everything else, it just worked wonders for me. And I'm not saying that it applies to absolutely anybody else, but when your brain is functioning on all the nutrients it needs, bioavailable nutrients, and it's not dealing with things like oxalates in plants that block your nutrient absorption, when it's not dealing with that stuff, you're getting the best of the best. So this has worked for me, and that's why I say the N=1 experiment. It's just on me. My brother's been doing the same thing. My dad did it this year, and he lost about 30 pounds, and he was feeling way better. And it was only a few months for him.
Very cool. 1 second. Jeremy, is this showing up for a lab?
Yeah.
Okay,
There it goes.
There we go.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't miss too much. Did we miss too much of what she was saying on that? Because that was real cool. She was talking about, but was it real loud in
We
there?
got it all. There's just a fan in the background.
Just a lot of
Whatever.
fans.
It's life, right?
That's okay.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
That's the fun about a podcast. I was watching Joe's the other day, and he's got a golden retriever, and it was like it just burst into the studio and was running around the table and jumping up on the table. So that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
So bioavailability, I know it's so funny. I mentioned that to you, and I think you have a diametrically opposed view to it. But I watched the documentary Game Changers, and I don't know, I got a little bit sold on it. But being open minded as I am, I've talked to a lot of people about plant based diet, and some people, it's just the general consensus I got is every human being's different. And what will work for one person won't work for the other, will not work for the other. So
Yeah.
I'm on that little venture right now. I'm 3 days into it, and I feel pretty darn good.
Yeah.
We'll see after a month or so. We'll see how I feel, how my body takes to not eating meat and taking just purely plant nutrients.
Yeah.
But
The best thing for everybody, the thing that is in common with every proper healthy diet is no processed foods. You eliminate processed foods from your diet, you're going to feel better.
yes.
And most people, what I've read is most people that do a vegan diet, they feel amazing for the first year. And then they start to find that their body doesn't recover as quickly, or it's breaking down a little bit more quickly. But this is, again, it's what I've read. I've also read that there's some evidence that people from certain regions, people that immigrated from certain regions of Europe, are way better suited to plant-based diet than others. You know, there's people like the Inuits that have always been heavily meat-based because there is no availability of vegetables, and that's what they thrive on. And so they're, like you said, it may not be completely drastically different for every human, but you've got to find what works for you. And honestly, if there came a day that this doesn't work for me, I will change it, right? I don't know what the word is, but
Yeah, you're not locked into it. You're
I'm
not
locked
yeah.
in. Yeah. But I do know from my experiment and from my health and from my life that this is the most healthy, the most active I've ever been. And for it to be sustained this way, I couldn't have asked for anything better.
It's probably, I would imagine, so diametrically opposed, where it's so easy to prepare and easy to do.
Yes.
But then you're probably, like you mentioned, your love for food, which I think we all love food to a certain extent, but then hard in the sense when you go out, I don't know, on a night out or out for dinner with your partner, and you're eating straight meat, or are you doing keto at that point? Are you straight carnivore diet?
Well, Tony Romas has an awesome ribeye. No, but he's my husband he's kind of doing the same thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he was on board. Actually, I hated that he did this because he made my life more difficult. It's like, hey, you go eat your craft dinner, and I will eat my keto food. It's really actually nice to have that support at home when someone else is, you're changing your lifestyle and someone else is kind of right there on board with you, because then there's no complaints. It's like everything that you make. Maria Emmerich, she has a lot of keto recipe books and really interesting stuff. I mean, the garlic cheese buns from Red Lobster. Well, we've got a recipe for that, but it's keto. So, and there's also a group called Keto Thunder Bay on Facebook. And my friend Dominique Chenard, she runs that. And I can't believe the number of people that are getting into it. And I think it's just because for a lot of people, it's sustainable. Yeah, it's
pretty easily doable. I've heard for a lot of people, because you can have the fun stuff with it too. You can have the filet mignon, and you can have whatever, you name it, without the added. So
well, the biggest challenge for a lot of people is they're always bloody hungry, right? If you can knock that hunger and actually feel satiated, you're going to do way, way better. And this is for me, for the 1,000 or so people that are on that Keto Thunder Bay site. It's really amazing to be able to feel that.
What does a day being carnivore look like? Like, what is your meal prep? What is, like, do you eat 3 meals a day, or do you eat when you're hungry? You kind of snack on the meat throughout the day, or what does that look like?
I eat when I'm hungry, and I notice a lot more now when I'm eating something that's kind of addictive. So I got married in September. That was the other thing this year. I was planning a wedding.
No wonder you burnt out.
A little bit, yeah. It went well though.
Yeah.
So after the wedding, I started having some keto treats. So I haven't been 100% carnivore since late September. And I noticed even before I came here, My husband's like, hey, when are you heading to that podcast? And I'm like, pretty soon. And I always had like a cheesecake in my mouth. So when it comes to things like the cheesecake or the banana cream pie that I'll make, it's keto, it's fine, but it's super addictive.
Yes.
Right? I can't stop. So when I'm carnivore, which I'm doing that tomorrow.
You're doing a reset tomorrow?
I'm going back to do a reset tomorrow. So if I am hungry in the morning, then I'll make eggs. I might have some liver. I really, really had a massive craving for liver in the first month that I was doing this. First, it was just chicken livers because they're really fatty, so they're really good. And then eventually you start kind of developing the taste for other stuff. And liver is the most bioavailable form of folate and vitamin A. So it was interesting that I craved it like crazy for a month, and then I was just done. I don't need it anymore. So I think I was refilling some stores. Lots of ground beef. So sometimes I'll just cook ground beef in a pan, and there you go, that's lunch. And at night, there's hamburgers, there's steak, there's pork chops, there's chicken. Chicken I find less satiating because it's not as fatty, but it's still good. We'll do chicken legs, chicken breast. If we really want to go out for something, we'll get some wings. Boston Pizza has really good wings, so no breading. Yeah, that's a typical day. Things to snack on would be cheese. We make a carnivore pizza where the pizza crust is made out of 7 cups of mozzarella cheese and 7 eggs.
Ooh.
It's deadly.
My brother's an awesome chef, and he makes fish tacos out of Parmesan cheese, and it's to die for. It's like, I think, the same kind of concept. He puts it in a pan, melts it down, and that makes the flatbread, and it's just to die for.
Cheese is just really versatile. So, we're talking about, like, carnivore is super cool to me because it's just nutrition stuff, and I nerded out about nutrition stuff and mental health stuff. But the mental health thing was really interesting because there's Dr. Georgia Eads, and she is, I believe she's a psychologist. Oh, that's terrible that I'm forgetting.
It's all right.
But she does nutrition research, and she talks about the impact of nutrition on mental health. And again, it's just like if your car is needing gas and you put oil in it, right? We're constantly exposed to cheap, processed, boxed foods that contain no real nutrients, right? If a boxed food, or if a food has to tell you it's healthy, it's not. And that should be pretty simple. And when I work with some of the people coming from Northern Reserve, so you go up to the stores there, it's like $15 for a jug of milk. I mean, the actual healthier food is almost unobtainable. And all there is, for the most part, is like cheap junk food that is all energy, all calories, and no nutrients. So you stay hungry, but you stay overweight and you stay unhealthy, and then diabetes rages out of control because it's all sugary stuff.
I remember that culture shock when I went to Mexico. My parents are snowbirds, and they spend 2 to 3 to 4 months sometimes in Mexico, and I went to stay with them for a month. And it's extremely impoverished where they go. And I looked around and I was like, how are all the children and people overweight? Like they're all living in like dilapidated homes. And I asked one of the locals we befriended, I said, why, if you don't mind me asking. And they said, one simple answer, Coca-Cola. They said, it's cheap.
Yeah.
You drink it, you feel satiated for probably half an hour, you know what I mean? It fills your stomach up, gives you that sugar rush or whatever, that burst of energy from the I don't know what the technical term would be, from the carbohydrate, I guess, that the sugar converts into.
Yeah.
And then the weight gain. So it's pretty amazing what unhealthy. I worked with a woman, and she's the gold standard. She was in her 60s. She probably looked like she was in her early 40s. Shout out to Magdalena from Sister Margaret Smith. She's no longer there anymore. But that was her rule of thumb. Just nothing from a box, nothing preserved. She didn't have any strict diet. It was eggs, bacon, toast. She just would not eat anything out of a can, anything out of a box. And she said that was her secret. Just, exercise and a clean diet like that. So it doesn't have to be complicated. But I think that's back to the mental health component. I think that's a big issue too that strikes with the people, is especially, like some of the struggles we're talking about, people in Thunder Bay, especially from harder to serve areas, is the diet's not there either, right? So
that's right. And not everybody is equipped to be able to go hunting, which would be, before the reservation system was even developed, the people would move. Like, they would never use up all of the land's resources, they would leave the area before the resources were completely used up, right? And there's so much research through the Weston Price Foundation about this kind of stuff, about just how tribal societies functioned. And so they would say, one tribe would leave the area, the next one that came along would look at the droppings and the leftovers just to see, well, what were you guys eating? Okay, well, we'll focus on something else. Like there was actually a system to it so that the land wasn't completely used up. And so now what we have is people that are stuck, they're stagnated, they can't go anywhere. And I mean, I can't tell you how many clients of mine will say, yeah, so we went out moose hunting, didn't get anything again. Like it's harder and harder.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's like fishing too. Like my brother's an avid fisher, and that's why people keep it so secretive, because as soon as everybody knows, everybody floods it, right? And
Yeah.
I just learned that actually, and we were doing kind of a spiritual day with the Catholic School Board, and we had an Aboriginal woman who shared her culture, and she explained exactly that. Like everyone was forced onto Fort William Reserve, but they were there maybe initially, but their range of territory was to Lake Nipigon, to like Wraith, to it was vast and expansive, exactly like what you're talking about. Like when they need to go moose hunt, well then they would trek all the way maybe to Nipigon and get their moose there and hunker down there for the winter. And then when the winter's done, they would move to a different area, never too far out of the geographical area, but it's exactly what you're talking about, which I found was pretty interesting. Yeah. Pretty sustainable. And I noticed you said that. I'm excited because I just in talks with Roots to Harvest. Yeah, I'm going to have them on pretty soon, awesome. The founder and or the CEO or whoever. I have to get the credentials in it.
Shortly, we're big supporters of Roots to Harvest.
Yeah, and I love what they do, and they've been avid supporters of children in the mental health field too. They have employment opportunities. It's so hard when I had a caseload of 24 kids and 10 are teenagers and they need summer employment, and they take them in. And the kids sustain the jobs. Like that's mind blowing to me that they must have. Speaks to the program where a hard to serve teenager who's in the child welfare system at 14 years old is showing up every day to their garden and working. So I think it speaks to what you're talking about, getting back to that visceral grassroots ground approach, right?
Yeah, it's putting skills into people's hands and skills that are good for survival. Stuff that, I mean, how many of us even know how to sew anymore? We only know how to, throw it out, go get another one. Like we have lost a lot of these life skills that could have sustained us during hard times. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I love what Roots to Harvest does. And, I think it speaks to a lot of their leadership, because they could be like a lot of workplaces and continue to allow the stigma against mental health. But what they do there instead is they try to help.
They embrace it.
They embrace it. They try to figure out, what do you guys need? How can we help you? We've been in talks with them to help out as well, with providing services. We haven't been able to match it up yet in terms of timing, but it's that's what's interesting now too, is there seems to be like a revolution of how people are managed these days, that you don't just push and push and push until people break, but you rather, teach them to long for the same goal that you have and then support them along the way. And that's how I run things too, that you can't just give people, here's this list of stuff to do and here's these targets, and if you don't do it, you're fired. It's more like, hey, I understand that after seeing 4 clients, you are probably staring at a wall like a computer rebooting here. You need time, or you're burning out like Kelly was having a hard time. What do you need? What do you need so that we can support you? Because you are more important. And this field has a 70% burnout rate. And sometimes that burnout means people never come back.
Yeah, they told us that in the first year of college, mental health field. And it scared me. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? Yeah. They said 3 years. Yeah. They told us 3 years is the average time that someone will stay in the child and youth work profession, mental health profession, and then they're out. And I saw it through and through and through. And it's I love what you're doing with creating your culture there, because that's what's needed. And people get into it with the best intentions in the world, like you and I, and they want to help and they want to make a difference, and then they just get burnt out. They get exhausted because they just give, and the culture and the organization might not be there, and it might not be supportive. Generally, it is usually supportive, but it's hard, right? Everyone's got their own prioritizations and things they're dealing with, so
it depends on the culture, right? I've worked in workplaces where you didn't want to be the person that was outside the door because you knew that they were talking about you inside the office. And that's a horrible, horrible place to be. In fact, I rage quit that job and because I knew what was going on. And then I started my own company.
There we go.
But that's the thing, like that is the atmosphere that I didn't want. I was so anti that. Like I needed so much for what we're creating to be that place where if you're caught talking about someone, you're caught talking about them in a favorable manner. You know, you're caught talking about how good they were in this situation or how strong they were, and the people that work for us now have just, they're thriving. They're just blossoming into this. We have one of our very talented therapists. She had a very difficult time. She has a health issue. And it causes her to, sometimes she can't come into work. Sometimes she's got to take off a bit early. She does everything she can to manage it. And she keeps apologizing to me. I'm so sorry. I know this really looks bad. And I said, well, what the hell are you going to do about that? It's a health issue. Do what you have to do. Take care of yourself. Prioritize yourself. And, we'll deal with it. Like we will get you through this because this is not something that you can help and it's not something that you can sort of be managed out of. Like this is a person. One of the funniest things that happened, almost ridiculous things, is that we've had our challenges with administrative staff. So last year, we had one admin that had been working on her own. She sent me an email on a Friday morning saying, hey, I quit. I'm not coming in. And then she wouldn't respond to me. She had a fight with one of the other employees there. I didn't know much about it. So we hired another girl. Within 3 months, she wasn't done her probation yet. She found out she was pregnant. So we hired someone else to give her a hand, someone part-time. And so the two of them were working together. She was training. The other one finds out she's pregnant. They gave birth within a day of each other.
Wow.
And then at the end of last year, so December, when I was trying to hire replacements, we ended up hiring 3 separate people, and now we're down to one because one unfortunately didn't work out, and then one found another job because this is just a contract while the 2 are on mat leave. So anyway, long story short, this is people's lives. I had to go back to work within 2 weeks of having my son because I lost my job. And I would have killed to be able to take a mat leave. And these people deserve to be able to spend the first year of their lives with their children. It's so important for workplaces to be understanding of that and to nurture that because these are individuals, these are people, and this is their life.
So do you have a framework that you established to make that milieu with your company and organization? Like do you have a structural framework that keeps it, understanding of people? Like how do you create that atmosphere?
It was created a lot in establishing our values.
Okay.
Our number one value is health, which is actually funny because we don't really see that listed on any real values. Usually it's like respect, integrity. Those are the typical ones, and respect is on there. But health is number one because we not only value the health of our clients that we're trying to help, but the health of our staff. Because staff that are beaten down and dejected, they're going to burn out. They're not going to make it through this field. They're not going to be able to help anybody if they can't help themselves. And it's important that we practice what we preach. If I give someone advice like, hey, maybe you need to slow down on some work, or maybe you need to do some deep breathing midday, I'm going to encourage our staff to do the same. We have mornings sometimes where we will start off with a meditation just because we need to do this. We had a staff that was having a hard time. It was the anniversary of a family member's death. Okay, in the room, we're going to do relaxation. We're not going to bring attention to this, but I know you need it.
That's so cool. Yeah, I worked at a Delico Day Treatment program in Heath Park School at one point, and at the certain time I was there, the certain management was there, who I still know to this day. They had this structure where we all met in the morning, and it was a round table, and we did a smudge, and then we did a check-in. It's just a simple check-in. If you want to elaborate, you could. It was how you feeling? How was your night last night? Highlight and low light from your day yesterday, and then how are you feeling today? And it was back to that point of talking about validation and relationship. It was so validating to be like to people, today sucks. Like, I'm not going to go into why, but my life sucks. I'm fighting at home or whatever you say, whatever your little bit is. Everyone's aware of it and they acknowledge it. Okay, we see you're feeling that way, and then on to the next person. If you want to elaborate more, you could. But it was just such a freeing feeling to go on with the day, be like, I don't have to hide this today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I can keep working, and now that people know that I'm struggling. And it was just such a difference. Back to that validation.
And it's a release too, right?
Mhm.
And then you actually end up feeling better because you've put words to it and you've been heard.
Mm-hmm. So that's so cool that you're doing that. There's a few other things I want to touch on here, but one last thing. OCD. Do you have any experience in that?
I do.
Okay, because I got a little bit of an OCD issue going on right now, and it bugs me, and this will be the last thing I pick your brain about. So it would have been kind of nice to wrap up on your organization there, because I think that's so positive what you're doing. But the sink, I check it. I think I don't know if it's trauma, but I've had some issues with my home with water damage. Water coming in certain places. Nothing crazy, but a sink was left on by, some kids who were playing in the house, and then water went around. But so now when I go to bed and I finish brushing my teeth, I turn the sink off and I see it's off, and I walk to my bed and I go, is the sink really off? Mm-hmm. I know it's off. Come on, Mark, you're crazy. Don't think the sink's not off. No, the sink's not. It might not be off. It might be dripping slowly. Go check. No, don't drip it. And I'm like, okay, just to shut this dialogue up in my head, I'm going to go check it and check it. And I go check. All right, it's off. I knew it was off. And then I can go to bed. And that's happening not insanely frequently, but enough, like 3 to 4 times. What causes those repeating patterns? Do you have any advice for and I've shared that simple thought with people, and it's been mind-blowing to people be like, really, you do that? Oh, you should hear what I do. And a few people have really opened up, and people I thought were like had it all together, and they it's funny, back to another topic with that vulnerability when you open up to people, what people share. And I don't know. Do you have any experience in OCD, and what causes it, and how to help with it, how to mitigate it?
Right. So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is usually marked by it can be pure obsessive. It can just be pure upsetting thoughts, intrusive thoughts that make you feel very, very distressed. But it can also have the compulsive aspect of it, where you do something, engage in some kind of a ritual, some kind of a behavior to then calm that anxiety. And if you don't do the ritual, like the checking, then the anxiety will just keep escalating and escalating until you finally get that relief of checking. But then the disorder comes with doing all of this ritual and obsessing this much is now causing havoc in my life. Right? So do you remember the floods of 2012 in Thunder Bay?
Yes.
The sewer backup.
Yes.
So the next morning after that flood, I went downstairs. Our main bathroom was being renovated, so I went downstairs to shower, and I stepped into water. Oof. Right? And for years afterwards, every time I was going to leave the door or the front door, I just check. I just check down the stairs. Just see, is it reflecting? Oh my God, is it reflecting? I could see it. And actually, it happened again twice. It was our sump pump that was busted.
Yeah.
So what you're describing there is probably just, what did you feel when you realized the extent of the damage? What kind of frustration and sadness and anger and self-loathing even did you feel when you knew that I don't know what to do about this? It was probably a big feeling of vulnerability, right?
Yeah, well, the feeling would have been, I don't know what feeling to attribute to it, but I was just overwhelmed in the sense that, like, I'm already working 2 jobs. I'm working generally 6 days a week, most often not 7.
Yeah.
And I'm strapped. I'm, built check to check like most people are. And I was like, damn, I can't put in a new floor. And if that goes, like, where do I draw that money from? Where do I, it's overwhelming in the sense of how do I pay for that? The water gets through my roof when the tile blows off, in the rainstorm, that windstorm that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do? So
what if
it was just overwhelmed. Yeah, it was just an overwhelming fear, I guess, would be the underlying emotion.
So your checking behavior it's probably related to trying to control that fear. Your mind just trying to tell you, don't let this happen again, because we don't want to feel that way again. But then if checking is interfering with your sleep and the anxiety continues to rise, what you got to do is just try to understand, what's the value in the checking? What is the value of obsessing? And get beyond what if. So what if you get beyond what if? Well, what if it floods again? Will you know better? Will you be better equipped to know what to do this time? Will you be able to clean up the mess? Are you capable? Do you have friends, or do you have people that you know that might be able to come by? Or could you band-aid it until you've got more money? Can you get beyond the what if and know that you are capable of handling it if something happens? And then from there, you go on to exposure. So you don't know if that sink is turned off. The heater turns on, it sounds like the sink's running. Don't get out of bed. Work on the anxiety. Do your breathing. Do your progressive muscle relaxation. Do your positive self-talk, your calming self-talk, that even if this happens, I will be okay. It's not the end of the world. It would suck, but it wouldn't be the end of the world.
So funny that you related the heater turning on.
Right.
It's like the same thing. My furnace broke down, and even that, like, it'll turn on, and I go, uh-oh. Is it on again? It's so funny that you mentioned that. Is that the water? Is that the furnace? What's happening? What's that noise? Like, that fear creeps in.
It's about letting go of that control, of that ultimate, even people that have OCD often heard that checking the doors or washing their hands, and that's the germ fear. And so what ends up happening is, you go through the cognitive aspect of it, finding out the value, trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to prevent.
Can you elaborate? I'm a little confused on that. What does that finding out the value mean?
What's the value of the thought? What is it allowing you to do that if you didn't have that thought, you wouldn't be able to do it? So the value of fearing that you left the sink on is that you will get up and check and ensure that sink isn't on.
Okay.
There's a value in that because otherwise you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's that safety feeling, right?
Exactly. My friend, that he was working out of town for 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and he was having major panic about leaving. And I couldn't really I couldn't talk to him about it because there was a value in that. Because if he freaks out enough prior to going, then maybe he can think of all of the possibilities that could go wrong, and maybe he can prevent all of them. Right. So there's a value in that panic for him. And there's a value in it for you, because then you check and you ensure. But again, it's not enough value if it then starts to negatively affect your life.
It reminds me of that picture with the wolf where it has the arrows in it. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
Where it's got like one, it's like you don't never get, I can't remember how it goes. You don't get stronger, you can just deal with more in life kind of attitude. Where it has the more arrows, it's just kind of like that. Like, you had stuff happen to you, you've dealt with it, you can get over it. You picture kind of the worst, it causes the anxiety. So
only if you've dealt with it, though. Because people, sometimes what I like to describe is like everything that we experience is kind of like being at the grocery checkout. Everything we experience is something that we're checking through, right? And they're little boxes, and they're jars, and they're big and small and big and small. And so when we talk about major traumas, major losses, those are huge, right? Those are big boxes, and sometimes they get stuck. Sometimes we don't have the supports or the resources or even just the know-how to know how to deal with it. And so it gets pushed back. But then you get enough stuff piled up and everything starts getting pushed back. So you're not coping at all. You're just surviving. So sometimes what it takes then is to deal with these traumas or to deal with these very upsetting losses and life changes is you got to slow everything down and stop buying stuff, right? You've got to take it apart bit by bit and get it through. But the more stuff is backed up, the more you're going to feel it. Like the less you're going to be able to function at all when something else happens, which inevitably it will.
It's so funny you say that. I think that's exactly what I'm kind of dealing with right now, because I have a couple home issues that are weighing on me, and I'm not dealing with them because they're kind of stuck in limbo. They're stuck there. And then other things in life are showing up, whether they're vehicle related or whatever, financial or lifetime prioritizing. And because I haven't dealt those, they're getting stuck.
Yeah.
So that's I'm going to take that and look at that.
Small steps really help.
Yeah.
There's apps that you can download that are just very minimal list apps. And then if you take a problem that's in your life and you go, what is the absolute bare minimum that would be a win? If it's, for our foundation, I needed to phone a lawyer. I got to talk to legal about this. I was terrified. I'm like, I don't know who to call. What if it's the wrong person? What if they're going to charge me $1 million and I don't even need this yet? And I was like, okay, I'm going to call the first name on the list and go from there. And just making that call, leaving that message was a win, right? It didn't resolve anything, but it was the first step. And then the momentum picks up. So small, easy, manageable steps. That helps.
Yeah, that's because that's another topic that I think the general public can identify with is procrastination, and it kind of sounds like they go hand in hand, because like you have that big issue, say whether it's a hole in your roof that you got to fix, and that's sticking everything else, then everything else is getting procrastinated, right? Because you're not dealing with one issue, so it's kind of sweeping it on the rug for the other ones.
Yeah,
So,
it's like anxiety for future pain.
interesting.
Yeah, because we're trying to prevent the pain that we're going to experience, and that anxiety just sort of being right there on the radar makes us seek dopamine, makes us seek those stupid things that make us feel good for a very short period of time, whether it's social media, Netflix, eating, drugs, drinking, all of those kinds. Like, that's procrastination right there. It's
Yeah, I know that firsthand. I work in the school system and I got the summers off, and I was ashamed of myself this summer because I had all these plans in the world with my summer off, and I did nothing. And maybe I needed to do nothing. I don't want to beat myself up for that, because we have such a hard time just not doing anything. We feel so guilty towards it these days, but I did do nothing, and it was because I had something stuck. And it's interesting how that can compound. So
I think the bigger things that happen to us, the more time we need in solitude or in just with nothing else coming in. You know, it's like if you've got 5 phone calls and you got to deal with all the paperwork, you got to shut the phone off for a bit and you got to do the paperwork. Otherwise, what happens? It piles up, you get more calls, you keep trying to please everybody, and then you're so overwhelmed you can't remember what anybody wanted. So you're paralyzed, and then you crash. So all you can do is try to control what's coming in a little bit, control what you are allowing into your life.
What's interesting, though, another topic that I find people struggle with is boundaries and saying no.
Oh God,
yeah. That's a common one. That's a group that we run with the youth, and it's a real pertinent one. I find is just to be able to just say no, and what is that in us that we don't know how to say no and prioritize ourselves first.
Yeah. That is a big challenge for me because of the whole ADHD. I get, distracted by fun opportunities and, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's just forget what I already committed to doing. Although I have a desk calendar now, so that's been life altering. I can see what I signed on for.
Yeah, organization is key.
So much. But boundaries is a challenge for a lot of people. And like I said, saying no is a challenge for me because I don't like to upset people. But telling people how I feel is not difficult for me because I've done that work. Like, people will come in and they have such a hard time just putting words to how they're feeling without, I don't know, yelling and screaming or saying something mean. And I think that's because they've just waited so long to say it that they want to almost inflict that hurt that they've been feeling. And that's something that I want to write about. It's going to be in an upcoming article, is that why instead of trying to solve an issue, instead of actually working together to problem solve, why are we so much more focused on hurting the person that hurt us? Right? Like
what is that? Do you have any ideas about that? Because that's my kind of fail-safe sometimes too. I'm a real, like, I should have been in litigation because I'm a good attacker. Like, I can.
Oh, I'm a terrible attacker.
In relationships, you know what I mean? And maybe not in the professional world and personal world. I'm very, polite and respectful usually. But in relationships, I could be mean. I could be very, very judgmental, I think is the word, and I keep a tally, and I remember dates. I'm not perfect. I'm not a terrible person. I'm not trying to paint myself as evil. But what is that where people? I guess it's just a defense mechanism. What is that where people want to attack instead of figuring out?
Well, the thing is that if you're not open about your needs, then your needs are usually not being met. People aren't psychic. They can't read your mind and tell you or be able to serve your every need. And sometimes even if they know what you need, they're not capable of it. So I think that tendency to hurt, that tendency to lash out is really about the fact that trust has been lost. We can't trust a person that, isn't meeting our needs. And sometimes that negative self-talk, well, they're not meeting our needs because they don't care about us. Right? That core belief, maybe I am unlovable, is now influencing my interpretation of your actions. Right? So if say I'm working all day and I know you're off and I come home and you turn to me and go, hey, can you, or what's for dinner? And my interpretation, if I ultimately feel that I am unlovable or not valuable or somewhat worthless, is, wow, you don't care about me. You wouldn't even get up to make dinner. I must be not good enough. And so then I'm going to take all of that anger and all of that hurt and I'm going to lash out at you because you've broken my trust. And the worst thing about it is that 90% of that happened in my own head. And then you're going to react to it because I would have just attacked you. And here you're like, I'm tired. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I have too much on the go. I took a day for myself. Now you don't value me enough to, allow me to have that. And so then it gets out of hand, right?
Cycle at that point, I
It's
wonder.
brutal.
Yeah.
And we all do it. I do it. We all do it.
We
These
all
are
do it, yeah.
automatic thoughts. And it is really unfortunate that it seems like all of us have these thoughts, like that tendency towards the negative. And it takes work and it takes paying attention to figure out, like, is this actually real? Are there any other possibilities that we could have to explain what happened here? Maybe there's unfair assumptions on either side. Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back in there for a couple of minutes.
Oh, it's okay.
It's interesting though.
We'll talk later.
It's fine. It's interesting, and I want to shop around because we did explore couples counseling, and sometimes there's the right fit, I think, and sometimes there's. Have you noticed that with counselors and with clients you see? Maybe because you have a big team, maybe somebody's issues are suited for one person for more so than another person. Have you encountered that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we do have a policy that if someone comes in and has paid for a session and it's really not the right fit, that we'll put them with another counselor there free of charge.
Wow.
Because it's funny is in terms of outcomes for counseling and things like that, it's so much about therapeutic rapport. So rapport with the right person. It's just as much related to rapport as it is the client's level of readiness and the therapist's skill level. You can have an unskilled therapist with a client that is ready and they are good together, a good match, and you'll have a better outcome than, a very highly skilled therapist with not enough of rapport.
Well, what do you have, closing off here, what do you have in the future coming up?
Oh my God, everything.
Too much. So what would you say to people if they want services? How do they take that? Like you said, they feel overwhelmed, which I think a lot of people are. I feel we've talked about there's no shame in asking for help.
No,
it's not mental illness. It's mental health. We prioritize our bank accounts, we prioritize our shopping, our health, our bodies, but our minds we seem to neglect. So how would someone take the first step to get in touch with you guys?
Well, like you said, basically going to counseling is an investment in yourself because it's not just airing out your grievances, it's learning. It's talking to someone who knows generally what they're talking about when it comes to the mind and how we develop these beliefs, and it's learning about how it works so that then you have those tools to be able to go and take better control of your own life. We're not fixing anything for you. You are fixing it yourself. With us, we're a private company. So you call us, you Facebook us, you email us, you text me, and we'll get you in. And we don't generally maintain much of a wait list. We have pretty solid caseloads for all of the people that are on our team currently, but we are expanding as well. And so typically people will get in within a week or two. And a lot of times we have a short notice cancellation list as well. So we can go through and call people that are available for certain days and see if they want the spot. If you happen to have workplace benefits, that's great because usually there's coverage for registered social worker, but I would encourage you to check that, make sure that it says that. Some of them only have psychologists, and we don't have psychologists on staff at this point.
Okay.
The other thing is that there's other funding sources. So if you have First Nation status, if you have any connection to the Indian residential school system, like a family member that attended and was part of the settlement, you have free coverage.
Wow.
Yeah, all you need to do is call us, have your status number, or have the name and date of birth of your family member that attended. There's also, and the government is not really promoting this, but there is a fund to cover people that have been impacted by missing and murdered Indigenous women. So people that have been impacted negatively by that, they also have free counseling, and we can access that for you.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope the people who work for any organizations listening to this definitely jump on that, because I know through my child protection work and children's service work, it's hard to find quick access sometimes. It's definitely long wait lists, and it's definitely hard to find the right fit. So it sounds like you guys are offering an awesome service. So
Yeah, we're really hoping to, again, expand more with the foundation. We're hoping to do some fundraising to develop more programs, basically to help people for crisis sessions, as well as to allow them to apply for some funding to cover a few sessions, like with the Andrew Media Foundation. And I mean, I don't know anything about fundraising. That'll be another learning curve for me, but we'll see. Yeah.
There's a lot in the future. I could see you back in the hot seat sometime in the near future, because you definitely have a lot going on. Thanks for giving me your time. I've really appreciated it.
Thanks.
Kelly Mental Health, look at them online, Facebook, Instagram. I'm sure you're on everything, right?
Oh yeah, Pinterest, everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we keep telling people to get off social media, but yet we're everywhere. So
it's the tool these days. It can be a weapon or a tool, social media. So
that's true.
Utilize it. Mental health first priority.